I had been of Greer's Landing for 11 years before the sky remembered my name. The trading post sat at the dead end of the only paved street on Tessa's Hollow, a border moon with one decent well, 2 reliable seasons, and a population that measured trust in years, not words. I sold rope, filters, dried protein, and the kind of tools that broke exactly as often as the work demanded. I kept my hair cropped short and dyed the green out of my skin with a tincture that stung for a week and faded fast, so what showed under the shop lights was a plausible, unremarkable gray-green, nothing a stranger would look at twice. My eyes I could not change. Storm gray, my mother used to say, like weather coming. I told customers it was a condition from the outer settlements. Nobody on Tessa's Hollow asked twice about anything. That was the whole reason I had chosen it. Cobb Renner ran freight between the Hollow and the 3 moons beyond it, hauling water filters and seed stock, and the occasional crate nobody wanted to name out loud. He came into my shop on the same rotation every 6 weeks, paid full price without haggling, and never once tried to talk me down on a bent fitting or a dented can. The first season I was there, a trader named Voss tried to walk off without paying for a coil of cable, and Cobb, who had no stake in it, who didn't even know my name yet, put a hand flat on the counter and said, low and even, that the lady had quoted a price and the man would pay it. Voss paid it. Cobb never mentioned it again. What he did mention, every season without fail, was my awning. It leaned. It had leaned since before I arrived, warped by some long-ago storm, and I had learned to duck under the low corner without thinking about it. Cobb noticed it the second visit. The third visit, he came an hour early with a length of salvaged strut and fixed it himself, refusing payment, refusing thanks beyond a nod. Every season after that, rain or dust storm or quiet stretch, he checked the brace, tightened what needed tightening, and said nothing about it unless I asked. I never asked. I watched him do it from inside the shop, through the dust-streaked window, a man with nothing to gain doing a small thing correctly because it was the kind of man he was. I had been a great many things before I was heir designate of House Andrei, third in line until the Regency Council decided a war footing, required a cleaner line of succession, and a body that could be quietly removed from the equation. I had been carried off-world in a supply crate by a steward who loved my mother more than his own life, and who did not survive the year that followed. I had been for 11 years nothing at all, and on a border moon with 1 well and 2 seasons, nothing at all had been the safest thing I had ever been. The wardenship came down on a clear morning in the dry season, and I knew before the dust settled what it was. House Andrei built its hulls the same way it built everything else, for permanence, not speed. I watched it land from my doorway with my hand already closing around the counter edge, and I made myself breathe the way I had trained myself to breathe when the old fear surfaced. Cobb was at the counter that morning, settling his account, and he watched my face instead of the ship. "Trouble," he said, "just that." "I don't know yet," I said, which was the truest thing I had told anyone in a decade. The warden's name was Atren Kale Voss, and she walked the length of Greer's Landing with 4 enforcers and a seal stone carried in a lined case, the old bloodline relic that had named every Andrei heir since before the moon I stood on had a name. She did not shout. She did not threaten. She went door to door with the patient, terrible courtesy of someone who has been searching for 11 years and has finally narrowed the search to one place. And she told anyone who would listen that House Andrei's lost heir was believed alive, believed nearby, and that the Regency would pay handsomely for any information. She came into my shop on the second day. The stone in its case gave one small pulse when she crossed my threshold, the way a compass needle twitches near iron, and I watched her pause, frown, glance at the case, and look back up at the dye-gray woman behind the counter who sold her a filter cartridge and gave her exact change. I held still the way I had held still 100 times before. The stone settled. She thanked me and left. I should have run that night. I had the means, a supply skiff fueled and waiting, a route memorized for a decade I had hoped never to use. I stood at the back door with my hand on the latch and could not make myself open it, and when I finally understood why, it was not bravery. It was Cobb's strut bolted into my crooked awning, holding up something that should have fallen down years ago, asking nothing in return. 11 years of a man fixing what was broken, without once asking what it cost him to care. I did not know how to walk away from the one true thing I had built without a name attached to it. The third morning, a child ran into the street chasing a loose pack animal, straight toward an enforcer with a charged rifle and 11 years of fear behind his eyes. I did not decide to move. I simply moved, the way the body moves before the mind agrees to it, and I had the child by the collar and the animal turned before the enforcer's hand had finished closing on his weapon. The seal stone, still in its case across the square, did not pulse this time. It rang. Every head in Greer's Landing turned. The warden walked toward me across the open dirt, and I straightened, and for the first time in 11 years I let myself stand the way I had been taught to stand before I learned how dangerous standing that way could be. "Air designate," she said, "not a question." "Sarineth," I said, my own name spoken aloud tasted strange after so long. "Valandrai, yes." She knelt. Her 4 enforcers knelt with her, in the dust, in front of the trading post with the crooked awning, and the whole of Greer's Landing watched a woman they had known for 11 years become someone else entirely without moving an inch. "The Regency has been without a settled line for 11 years, the warden said, still kneeling. 3 houses contest the seat. The council sent me to find you and bring you home." "Stand up," I told her, and she did. "I'll come, not dragged, not hidden, not delivered like cargo. I'll come because the seat needs settling and I am the one left to settle it. But hear me now, warden, and carry it back word for word. I have spent 11 years as nobody, selling rope to people who never once asked what I was worth. I learned more about governing in that shop than I ever did in the nursery wing. The court that gets me back gets that woman too. Both of us, or you go home empty." She looked for a moment as though she might argue. Then she looked past me, at the man standing in my doorway with a coil of unbought cable still in his hand, who had not knelt, who had not run, who was simply watching me with the same steady, unhurried attention he gave a bent fitting or a leaning post, like something worth the trouble of fixing properly. "And him?" the warden asked. "He stays where he's always stood," I said. "Beside me. That part isn't negotiable either." I did go home, in the end, on my own terms, with a freight hauler at my side who had never once asked what I was worth before deciding I was worth the trouble. The court did not know what to make of him at first. A weathered man with rope-scarred hands who refused every title they offered him and asked instead, on his second day in the palace, whether anyone had checked the East Hall's roof, because he'd noticed a sag in the beam on his way in. I let him fix it. I have learned since to let him fix what wants fixing, and to stop pretending that watching him do it quietly, season after season, asking for nothing, was ever just gratitude. The throne room has a crooked place above the eastern door now, original, structurally sound, repaired by hand by a man who never cared what crown was watching him work. I had it left exactly as he mended it. Of everything restored to me that year, it remains the truest thing I own.